Hey, this is Nick Millivoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
This is the 100 Guitarist podcast, where each week we're telling you about one of the 100 guitar players that we think you should know. Today we're talking about the great Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and we have a very special guest with us.
Molly Miller is joining us. Oh, excuse me. Dr. Molly Miller. Doctor.
And don't you forget it.
She writes a prescription for 251s. You know what I'm saying? Minor. Those are rare. So, first, you can get at us. 100guitarists at premierguitar.com. That's the email. We do not accept snail mail at all whatsoever, but you can call or text us 319-423-9734.
Leave us a voicemail.
Leave us a voicemail.
Tell us what you think about the pod. Tell us what you think about, whoever we're going to be talking about next. You can keep an eye on our social media. But while you're doing all this work around the internet, various parts of the internet to communicate with us, also rate us and review us. Give us a little thumbs up wherever you're watching or listening. Right. You can find us anywhere you've listened to podcasts. It's free. So before we talk to Molly, we want to tell you about a couple things from Gibson, who've graciously sponsored this podcast that have to do with our subject today, Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Gibson offers the custom 1963 Les Paul SG custom reissue, and that comes with the Maestro Vibrola in classic white. The 1963 Les Paul SG was an evolution of the 61 model that was used by Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and this new model comes from the Gibson Custom Shop, where it's crafted by the artisans of the Gibson Custom Shop using the original construction methods and period-correct materials, as well as the original body contours. Features a solid mahogany body, mahogany neck, with an ebony fretboard and a 60s slim taper profile, and comes loaded with 3 Gibson custom bucker pickups.
There we go. Now I know what you're saying. Jason, I already have the guitar. I already have the white SG,
where can I go from there?
I need more. So Gibson has the Sister Rosetta Tharpe collection, my friend. They have women's tees. They have tour jackets. They have t-shirts, pennants, Oxford pennants, mini Oxford pennants. They have the Godmother of Rock and Roll pennant. They also have an enamel pin set, but sorry, too late, sold out. Guitar straps.
Gonna find a used one.
They have the mini SG Axe Heaven 61 Les Paul SG miniature guitar. What? Sold out. Posters. Sold out. You got to get on this quick. But they do have the Camp Flag, Godmother of Rock and Roll, which that looks awesome. They also have the book, The Untold Story of the Rock and Roll Trailblazer. $18. That's a deal. We have gift-giving holidays coming up. So head on over to Gibson.com and check out the Sister Rosetta Tharpe collection. And thanks to Gibson for sponsoring this episode.
All right, so we're going to talk to Molly Miller about Sister Rosetta Tharpe. And as soon as we started looking, seeing this episode on the horizon, you said, we got to talk to Molly.
She might have called it. She might have, because she called in on the Benson episode.
Yes.
I remember from tour after 2 glasses of wine, if I remember right. And it was during that exchange where she's like, let me know when you guys are talking about, not even knowing. She just knew that Sister Rosetta was going to be on the list. So she's like, let me know when you're talking about Sister Rosetta. So we scheduled it. We got to her. She's just off tour with Jason Mraz. She hops around. She plays. She just come out with a new record. That's great.
Great record.
Big fan of Dr. Molly Miller. I brought her down. I brought her to Iowa for a gig. That was a great time. She taught my daughter some of the finer points of vegetarianism.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Which was great, as my daughter is a young vegetarian, I should say. She's not a vegan, she's a vegetarian. But yeah, Molly is a friend of the show, if there ever was one.
Yeah.
So,
jazz correspondent? Not the only jazz correspondent.
That could be in discussion. Yeah, but she'd be up for it. We'll think of a title. She needs a title though. She's on the 100 Guitarists masthead. I will tell you that for sure.
That's right.
So, all right. Well, let's hop to it. And here's our talk with Dr. Molly Miller. All right. Today we have the great Dr. Molly Miller joining us today. And as soon as I saw that Sister Rosetta was on our list, Molly, I had wonderful thoughts back to that lesson you wrote for us years ago,
Yes.
which was really the first time I like took a more serious look at her playing. And so as soon as I remembered that, and I was like, there's only one person we need to get on this show, and that's Molly. So how are you?
I'm
today?
great. I've been, just living the dream, playing
Yep.
guitar, teaching guitar, hanging out with guitar folks, and here I am thinking about Sister Rosetta Tharpe, my queen.
Now, remind me, Molly, did you, and I thought about this too when we were talking about that lesson years ago, did you actually do some like academic writing during your college years? Some kind of project thesis about Sister Rosetta? Tell me about that.
Yes, so I did it was basically my dissertation. It was the lecture recital, and it was titled Pioneering Women of the Guitar. These women, it was like hiding in plain sight. All these like women that were freaking super important to the history of music and history of guitar that I feel like we don't talk about and didn't give enough credit to. Sister Rosetta was definitely the one I fell in love with, but I also talked about Maybelle Carter and Memphis Minnie. But Sister Rosetta had the biggest kind of my mind was blown by her, and I dug really deep into her, and I feel like she is a huge influence on me for musically and just what she represented.
So how familiar were you with her playing before you started that project?
Not at all. I feel like I'd seen a picture of her,
Right.
And I did this probably in 2015, 2016. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I graduated in 2016. So this was probably 2016. And I went deep, and I just like scoured the internet for every possible video of her, because there is a bunch of live stuff. There's like a documentary with her old church childhood friends talking about her. There's a book on her. So I just went super deep on Sister Rosetta.
Do you remember the first time you listened to her?
God, no, because it was just like this, it was like just a whole experience of diving in.
Yeah.
And it was probably like watching some live footage I was like, what the F is going on? And I just kept getting deeper and deeper. And the more I learned about her, the more I fell in love with her. Because she's obviously like immediately impressive. Her playing, her persona, like on stage, she's captivating.
Yeah.
But then the more you learn about her life and what she stood for, and the more I transcribed her playing, I was like, oh, damn. Like, it's not just like pentatonic. Like, it's a very interesting blend of, early rock and roll, bunch of like jazz licks, chromaticism, blues. So it's like, it is an interesting mix of stuff that sets up the stage for rock and roll,
Yeah, I feel like, so just thinking about like her influence, to me, it's like, there's all this talk now about, in more recent years about like how she had this really strong influence on early rock and roll, and then on the British invasion guitar players, because they went to the UK, and that was the early 60s, did this tour. There's the story
with Muddy
of the show.
Water. Yeah,
it was her with Muddy Waters, and there's that one show in I guess London that Keith Richards, Brian Jones, Eric Clapton, and Jeff Beck all apparently attended, and it's like this big guitar influence.
Yes.
But I feel
George
like
Wein tour, or Wine, I don't know how to say his last name.
was it one of those? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think like somewhere after that sort of fell out of, just like disappeared from the discussion for decades and decades. And what I think, the reason I asked you if you remember when you first heard her, but even just like, just seeing videos of her, I feel like that's where like people of our generation and like modern listeners discovered Sister Rosetta. Is like, maybe we saw pictures of her in some like guitar book or something. It's like here's this, and a lot of the photos are from later in her career, because she was born in 1915. So by the time by the early 60s, when a lot of the TV stuff was, she was almost 50 years old.
Yeah.
And not old, but not young. And, so we might have had an idea about like, the way she was dressed to like what she might have sounded like.
Yes.
Right? She looks like a church lady or something, right? And then YouTube comes along and all these videos come up. That's how I first heard her, was on YouTube. And she's got the 3 pickup SG, and it's just this explosive thing that sounds like nothing we would have ever pictured her playing, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, because her career is fascinating. She really did like grow up on stage, starting in the church, Church of God in Christ, was in Chicago. Like there's so many things about her career where it's like, I don't know, it's fun to see like I don't know, like if one thing was different. Like she was in Chicago, which was a clearly like important guitar city. Probably super influenced by like the blues music around her, church around her. She was like 10 and a superstar in the church.
Yeah.
And then gets a little older. And I mean, like, I love her story. She's like, gets married at 19 to a reverend and he's abusing her. And she's like, not physically abusing that I'm aware of, but like abusing her talents because she would perform and he would preach. And then she's like, I'm not happy. I'm a star, you know, and moves to New York, works with Lucky Millinder. She was Count Basie. And there's like a Count Basie, Lucky Millinder, Cab Calloway. She's singing, and then like
Benny
slowly,
Goodman.
Yes, it's like she's like, and she's singing, starting to blend like gospel with secular music, which is very like risque. Her friends, her community were like, "What are you doing? Like you're our sweet little like church woman that's like." You're with us. And now suddenly she's like in this bad, naughty world of New York City secular jazz music. And then she goes on tour and it's like all the like stuff going on with segregation. She was like defying. She had the Jordanaires in her band, which is, you know, later Elvis's background singers, which was
Who
like
invented the Nashville number system.
really
The Jordanaires.
wow.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
didn't know that.
fun.
That's
Fun
true.
fact. Yeah, but and I think she fell off too, like later in her life after, you know, whatever. There's a bunch of stuff we can talk about that she does that's really incredible. But like at the end of her life, she had diabetes and was like, wouldn't see the doctor, lost a leg, and she used to perform with one foot jumping up and down on stage, like raging on guitar when she's like 60 or something and one-legged. And like wouldn't stop. It's not like that's I love this idea of her. She's so freaking bold and defiant, and she was a pioneer. Yeah.
Yeah. She something that was surprising to me, you know, I don't know, whenever it was, a few years ago, 10 years ago or something, when I discovered it, is that I grew up in Philadelphia. I live in Philadelphia. She lived in Philadelphia from 1957 until her death in 1973. And researching this, looking for it, nobody ever talks about that she spent 16 years living in Philadelphia. And I think that that's really interesting. And I looked up, there's a plaque in front of her house. And I looked up a picture of the plaque, and I have this idea what it would look like. It's just like a house that was probably built in the 50s. That's like a Philly row home built in the 50s. Like it's totally not what I don't know what I would picture, but it wasn't. I don't know. It was surprising. So that's my favorite like little fun fact about you know, just her biography.
Wow. I think my favorite fun fact about her biography is her third marriage. That was
Yes,
a
I'm
show
glad
at
you mentioned
the
One of the
stadium.
first rock and roll, or you know, one of the first stadium concerts.
Yes, there's like, and like 25,000 people go to this wedding to like a random guy. She's like, hey, can someone just like find me a husband? I want to do a live record that's my wedding, and everyone bring me gifts. You know, it's just like, and they were married till like her death. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, they stayed married for 22 years, and people paid to attend the wedding because it was also a concert.
I feel like there has to be a documentary just on that.
There
Just
should
on
be.
that wedding.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
didn't find any, but there should be.
There should be.
There
but
is a recording. So that was part of it was I want to make sure I get this right. Maybe you know, Molly. Decca Records, like the idea was like pitched by some folks at Decca who were her label. They didn't, you know, they didn't force it on. They were like, this would be a cool thing. I guess I don't know if she was talking about getting married. I don't know the context of that. And she was like, yeah, I got this. And so she like found a husband to do this. She's
Yes.
been married twice already, and she's like, I'll find somebody, set it up. Book it.
Yes,
And-
but it wasn't. It was like in weeks. She was like, it was like 2 weeks, and she's like, in 2 weeks, she's like, I'll marry this guy, sure.
I got it.
Yeah.
And then Decca was like, we just want to release the album. And you can listen to it. You can listen to the wedding ceremony. Right before we got on here, that's what the last thing I listened to on YouTube was her being married in front of 25,000 people.
Oh my God. And it's not like true love. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Also, like, I think her whole love life, I don't know. She was like, you know, Marie Knight, the woman who's up above my head, like that song, which was one of her hits she did with her. And my understanding is that was also her like secret partner. She was like
Right,
secretly
that's
in
what
this
I've
like
heard.
lesbian relationship with this woman. There's like so many things about her that like I don't know, like you wonder what the possibilities of would be if she lived in a different time, but also like how important she was. I mean, like all these things she was doing that were so defiant against norms at the time. A
Yeah.
black woman playing rock and roll music on a tour bus. She was like one of the early people to have a tour bus. She had beds on there because she wasn't allowed to sleep in a lot of places, mixing like of black and white people, performing for whites, mixing gospel music with secular music. She was the first gospel artist on Decca too, is my understanding. So yeah, there's
Oh, wow, yeah.
so many things about her that are just incredible. But then I do, her guitar playing, of course, is, just the same thing, like defiant. All these things I feel like she doesn't get enough credit for. The windmill,
Yeah,
that
she
was
put
her.
out, that's part of the show, right? Like there's this show energy to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
let's talk about her playing a little bit because
Yeah.
so just to sort of parse out like her recorded stuff, her early stuff. She's playing acoustic. I think she's playing a resonator a lot of the times. And
Like a
there's,
jazz
to me,
box.
it's like there's that stuff, and then there's the electric stuff, which also is like some of the early use of like an overdriven, heavily played guitar tone. And we know most like from videos we see her playing her 61 Les Paul Custom SG. But I've also seen there's some videos out there of her playing a Gretsch, her playing I think a Barney Kessel, various other guitars. But she played with a thumb pick and just always so driving. And I guess it's like she's playing electric guitar as if she's playing a resonator. But the vocabulary is a little bit different. Do you want to break that down a little bit?
It's funny because I mean, I hear her playing kind of the same. I mean, maybe it was more showy and more rocky, I guess, on the electric, but like you still hear a ton of chromaticism. She often tuned down, I believe, a minor third to standard C sharp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was like watching videos of her and she'd like strum an E chord. I'd be like, that's not an E, that's a C sharp chord.
Yeah.
So she tuned down. And so I imagine she had a heavy string gauge, but she would dig in so deep and
So
lots
hard.
of like, big slides and bends, which you think rock and roll. And then
The slide
you hear-
stuff is so important in her phrasing and her vocabulary, particularly on electric, right? It's like she does so much with just sliding her hand up and down.
Yes, so much, very rhythmic, which is like something that I feel like I love to do, and sometimes because it's like the use of the instrument. It's so I don't know. I guess it may be the use of the instrument, like slamming it hard, getting all these rhythmic sounds. When she does slide, it is like very rhythmic as well. And then the chromaticism is something that I think about a lot. Like I see her, I feel like she plays in shapes a lot. And in my head, and I like it is like she'd get in like the A shape, if you will, and just do these like chromatic lines, like ba da 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 da, like in this E shape often, and play variations on it. Because when I was transcribing her stuff, it was like some of the lines were kind of similar in a similar shape, but varying some note choices and some rhythm. Yeah. I'd say those are some highlights. I feel like chromaticism, bends, slides, and they're like so rhythmic too.
Yeah.
Where do you think she, because she's the generation before Chuck Berry,
Right.
right? So she was basically a contemporary of, say, Charlie Christian, probably.
Yeah.
Where do
Yeah,
you
Strange
think?
Things Happening Every Day, which wasn't her first song, but that's sort of like I think of that song. That's probably the first thing I think of when I think about her music. That one are up above my head. But Strange Things was recorded and released in
It's funny.
1944.
But Down by the Riverside too was 1940. I'm like, and then Rock Me. Rock Me, I think she was like actually earlier too.
I think
'Cause that-
Rock Me is one of the first ones, maybe the second
Yeah,
song. or something.
and that is like one. I think it's 41 maybe. I feel like I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I feel like oh no, Just a Closer Walk with Me is 41. What year is Rock Me? Because that's the one I don't remember. I feel like in the 40s, but that's where she's like mixing. She like
1938.
changed. Okay, cool. Wow. Yeah. And that's like, that was a
Totally.
big one because she's mixing, it's like instead of a line about Jesus, it's like, won't you hear me singing and singing instead of like, hear me. I've written it down somewhere, but the lyric she shifts from like, won't you hear me, Jesus, hear me praying to like, won't you hear me singing or something. And then she's like, rock me, which is like very different contextually. Okay. But what were we saying?
Where do you think she got these influences from? Because
Yeah, I feel like people talk about like her gospel influence or blues influence, stuff like that. But I'm curious about like, I feel like that, that's talking about the music and maybe, as it relates to her singing. Granted, she was playing guitar in church since she was a little kid, but like specific guitar influences, I'm really interested in knowing what they were.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine Charlie Christian and the likes of him because she is hanging out at like the Cotton Club in, the 30s, early 40s. You think about like, because I do hear some of her lines as having a bebop influence.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like it is hanging out in New York City with all like these mega, like at the Cotton Club, where so much was invented.
Yeah, like listening to, I don't think like on Strange Things, I don't think she's necessarily like using the same vocabulary as Charlie Christian, but it's like I just hear those as parallel things.
Yeah. It's like I think I've heard so many recordings of I'm thinking of like Rock Me. I feel like there's so many recordings of so many of these songs, and it's interesting to hear the differences even from one to the other, but there are similarities in vocabulary. And it's funny that you say Charlie Christian. I totally do feel like Charlie Christian is an influence, but she also played piano,
Mm-hmm.
And I like there's some image of her. I feel like it's like her and Duke Ellington and someone else in New York City. I remember there's some picture, and it's like she's hanging out with these people, listening to their music, singing songs. I imagine playing piano and guitar. Like that has to be, and then like it's like Chicago blues, like growing up, gospel, church, blues, and then hanging out with a bunch of jazz people, you blend it together, and I feel like that's what's happening with her.
Yeah.
How great would it have been to be in the room when she first like cranked up her amp and was like, oh,
God,
that's what that thing does. Like,
yes. I mean, I
Right?
think, she's like such a performer. She's so captivating.
Yeah.
So that would have been, I feel like, people would be like, who, if you could see anyone, would you see? And I never think to be like Sister Rosetta, but that would probably be a life-changing experience.
I mean, it was probably for a lot of people because they'd never seen anything like that before. Anybody just as flamboyant and loud and brash and have this gospel side to her, So thumb pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was a thumb picker. So I'm just thinking like, so where would, if people want to get into that kind of style, I'm thinking like, what's like the basic recipe? Get it SG through like a tweed,
Like a little amp,
like a
tweed
tiny
amp.
little champ or something.
Yeah.
Crank it all the way up.
Don't dial up the tweed champ patch on your quad, whatever.
No,
You need a real amplifier here.
you need a real
Analog.
one, and a lot of open
No
strings.
pedals.
I feel like a lot of pull-offs to open strings.
Yes,
Right?
totally.
Thumb pick, and you got to have a heart attack.
Dig in. And I do think it's fun to like tune down. It's funny. I was like recently going through my guitar collection because I'm like, I need to sell some stuff because my room is overflowing with stuff. And there's this old like Samick arch top that it's not old. It's old to me because I don't use it, that I had permanently in standard C sharp because of her, because it just like feels different. It's just like does give you that extra like robust sound,
Yeah. What kind of strings do you have on there? What keys?
They're busted, but I think 12s.
Rusty.
I like picked it up. I think I hadn't played it in like 5 years, and I take it out and like a bunch of the strings had broken. I was like, oh my God, I need to get this thing set up. But yeah, I think I had 12s on there. I probably could have done 13s, but I did 12s, I think.
Rusty. Just rusty 12s.
They're serious
Tuned
rusty.
down.
And then like, the action had gotten super high. I was like, damn, Molly, you gotta love your instruments more.
Yeah, but Sister Rosetta, she probably just played through it. You gotta.
Yeah, she
You gotta.
pounded it.
It's like method acting for guitar players. You need a guitar that's hard to play, high action, dirty strings, humid, all that stuff.
God, I feel like such a little you-know-what talking about this topic. Because I'm like, can we do low action and make it really easy to play?
Can you put sevens on there?
Back in the day, they didn't
No.
have late strings in Sister Rosetta's day.
I know. No, I do 10 to 11. Someone did recently ask, and it depends on the guitar, but 10 to 11.
I mean, so what gauge string do you think she had? She had like probably 9s?
Videos of her with the SG, I'm thinking flat 12s.
Heavy.
Like that.
I agree. I would think heavy because she also tuned down. There's this great video of her on a TV show, and you can actually find a clip. It's like her, the Blind Boys of Alabama, and they're on some TV show, and she also gives an infomercial for some sort of X-Lax. It's like
What?
great. She was like, smooth move here, like whatever it is. Like, I want to find it. I just had this flashback when we were talking about her. But there is a clip. It's her, Blind Boys of Alabama, and her infomercial for some sort of X-Lax product.
That's incredible.
I
We
know.
got to track that down.
That's
We
the
got to
thing
track
is-
that down.
There is stuff of her. If you scour, unless this is like 9 years ago when I went super deep and was like every possible thing I could find. There's a lot of stuff, and it is so freaking good. And I really do feel like playing her stuff. I mean, I do have that lesson on Sister Rosetta where there's some of her transcriptions that you can actually check out. But yeah, I feel like an SG, but also like an acoustic, like a box you can do it on too.
Yeah.
So Molly, one of your students comes to you. They've seen you've done this lesson, let's say, or they've heard you've done this lesson, or maybe they've just watched this podcast and they're like, all right, what do I listen to? What do I check out? How are you guiding them with Sister Rosetta?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like watching is a cool way to get the whole experience. You watch, and then I would listen, and like the funny thing is like there's a lot of compilations online, but I do think they're good. Like, yeah, so because I feel like there's
Because all
not
the material is good.
yeah, it is. Like, there's nothing I've listened to where I'm like, oh, don't listen to this record or this compilation, because it is fun to hear the evolution. I do think I would recommend like watch some of her stuff. There's a ton of her, like the live, like that live thing from the TV show I was just talking about. The one that's like viral of her in Europe, which I feel like she plays Down by the Riverside on that one. In that Europe, London one, she's like in front of a train station. She plays a couple of songs there.
And I think that's the concert. The train concert is the one that all those guys were at.
which is crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy. But like, and then it's funny. I actually like some of her singing. There's some videos of like not a full band behind her where you just hear her playing guitar, because it is like great to hear at the time. Like some people were just like strumming and singing, but she's like strumming and doing all these lines. There's like a great version of her doing Rock Me like that. But I would just go in, and if you can, like they have compilations from the different eras too, of like the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. And it is fun to hear, just the evolution sonically of what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I agree with the. I'd go to YouTube first, because I think part of her whole aura is just seeing her, and seeing how she plays and how she makes the sound, and kind of the entertainment value of her whole thing.
Yes.
Like
It feels
in addition,
Yeah.
Sorry. No, it feels like she's like talking to God, like her head's, it's like there's some sort of like holy thing that's happening with her.
right?
Yeah, the energy, the vibe, and the command. She's just so confident. Mm-hmm. Something.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to point out that we didn't mention yet is just like her singing is so good. And for me, with guitarists who are also vocalists, I'm always interested in hearing ones that their guitar playing sounds like their vocals, which a lot of guitar players do. But like, I feel like her guitar phrasing and her guitar sound is so tied into the way she sings.
Yeah.
And in the videos, you really see it, because it's like her playing is so physical, and then her singing is so physical too. And there's just so much confidence and so much power and force when she's performing.
Yeah, I agree.
Take it.
Yeah, big time. I mean, she was sometimes hired just to be a singer,
Right.
All right, Molly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. For all the people out there, go check out Molly at a stage near you, very likely in 2025. Where can people go online, Molly, to see your tour dates?
You can go to www.mollymillermusic.com. But also, I think Instagram is where I'm most active.
That's right.
Moody Mill.
So, Moody Mill. There we go.
All right. Well, it's always great to talk to Molly.
Yes.
And a subject she knows so much about. I feel like Molly was a great source. She was, we had a lot to learn about Sister Rosetta.
She's
on
a
this
scholar.
episode. She's
a
a scholar.
scholar.
She's the
of it.
person to go to.
That's right.
So thank you, Molly.
So make sure to check out, I'm sure if you Google Molly Miller guitar, it'll come up. We'll have links
Don't
to all
forget
her
to check
stuff.
out that new trio record.
That's
a
right.
great
We'll
record.
have links to all that down in the description below. And thanks again to Gibson for sponsoring today's episode. Make sure to go check out that 63 Les Paul SG. I know what you're thinking. Young kids don't look like a Les Paul. Well, back in the day, back in the 1900s, that's what they called Les Pauls. And for those of you who already have the 63 Les Paul SG, head on over, look at the old Sister Rosetta Tharpe collection.
Don't wait too
Guitar
long,
straps. Yeah, half it's sold out, y'all. You need to get on it. You need to get
though.
some
The
gifts for
secondhand
some
market
people.
for that stuff is not a good market
Ooh,
to be on, so get it fast.
Watch out. We're talking there's commas in those prices. Commas. So, thanks again to Gibson for sponsoring today's episode.
That's right. And don't forget to get at us. Hit us by email at 100, that's 100 guitarists at premierguitar.com. Texts and voicemails can be received at 319-423-9734. Don't worry, nobody's going to answer. You just leave the voicemail.
There you go. All right. Got through another one, Nick. And I wish I could tell you what's happening next week, but I can't. So we'll see you all next week.
We'll see you next week.